Good evening. And if you're watching this, you are part of the Recovery 2.0 membership community, or you're part of the Recovery 2.0 coaching program. It is December the 24th. It is 2018. And Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everyone. Thank you for joining for this very special talk about the first three of the 12 steps, from the yogic perspective. And to get ourselves ready for this, I'd like us to do a little breath work, okay? And it's going to be very simple. We're going to bring the tips of our fingers together, just like that. The tips of our fingers together. So we make a little teepee with the hands, and hold that just in front of the heart center. Now, what I'd like us to do is we're going to spend about 3 minutes here centering in this breath exercise. Just 3 minutes. And let's set ourselves in a sacred way. Please, let's send out a prayer of blessings. A prayer of blessings to everyone, everywhere. That suffering can be alleviated. That addiction can be alleviated and healed. That families which have been broken apart can come back together. That our own individual selves that have been fractured or traumatized can heal and grow beyond those traumas. May we send these blessings to everyone everywhere as we do our breath work here on Christmas Eve. So what we'll do is we're going to inhale for 5 seconds. I'm going to count you through this. Inhale for 5 seconds. Hold the breath for 5 seconds. Exhale for 5 seconds. And we'll begin again. So 4 of those equals 1 minute. Inhale 5, hold 5, exhale 5. That's 15 seconds. 4 of those will equal 1 minute. We'll go for 3 minutes. We'll do 12 of them. For the 12 nights of Christmas, or for the 12 steps, or for the 12 apostles, or for the 12, whatever you want the 12 to represent. Okay? So just allow your eyes to close. Just let your eyes rest gently closed. Feel that the fingertips are touching. Feel that there's a centeredness, a groundedness to what you're doing right now. And please, let's take a deep inhale together, full inhale. And a complete exhale. And let's begin our breath exercise. So take an inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pause the breath. 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale. 2, 3, 4, 5. Pause the breath. 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale. 2, 3, 4, 5. Pause the breath. 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale. Pause the breath. Exhale. 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 Inhale. Pause. Exhale. Inhale. Pause. Exhale. Inhale. Pause. Exhale. Inhale. Pause. Exhale. Take a deep inhale and suspend the breath now. Just hold the breath. Exist in this breathless state now. And exhale. Release the hands down. Gently come with the eyes open. Deep inhale. Full exhale. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, you incredible people. Let's discuss. First, we'll begin with step one. We admitted we were powerless over addiction. We admitted we were powerless over addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. So that's the universal 12-step first step. I've replaced the word alcohol with the word addiction. We admitted we were powerless over addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. So the essence of this first step, two main concepts here: powerlessness, unmanageability. Now, the first step, in my opinion, is the most important step of them all. Without the solid foundation that this first step brings you, you literally just can't really go anywhere. And if you try to skip this first step, if you misunderstand the first step, it's really, really difficult. Really difficult. Now, just before I go on, if you're hearing a strange sound in the background, that's just the crickets of Jamaica. So there's no getting rid of that sound. So forgive me. Enjoy it. Know that it's the crickets. Okay? All right. So the first step here is the most important. You have to get this in order to move on to the rest. We might as well discuss right up front, why would you want to engage in the 12 steps? Because the 12 steps lead a person towards the truth. They lead you from darkness into light, from unknowing into knowing, from addiction to freedom. The 12 steps do that. They do that. It's not that they do that for some people. They do that. If you apply yourself to the open-minded and open-hearted approach to these steps, they lead you towards a greater understanding of yourself, of addiction, and ultimately towards a spiritual awakening, which gives you a foundation of recovery from addiction. They just do that. That's the thing that they do, and it's just wonderful. Okay, so this is why you want to do the 12 steps, because they work and they set you free from addiction, and because they are a path that one can follow and learn from and draw from for the rest of your life, that will lead you to ever greater understandings of truth. It really, really is an incredible doctrine, the doctrine of the 12 steps. And what is the doctrine of the 12 steps? It's the actual 12 steps, the 12 steps themselves, and the text or the texts that are built around walking through the 12 steps. Your way of moving through the 12 steps is the program. That's the program of, for example, Alcoholics Anonymous, or the program of Narcotics Anonymous, or the program of Overeaters Anonymous, or the program of Al-Anon, or Codependence Anonymous, or Adult Children of Alcoholics, or any of the other hundreds of groups that now exist, which have adopted the 12 steps as their method of moving from an addicted or stuck place to a place of freedom. So this is why you want to do these steps, and this is why This first step is so critically important. If you don't get this, it's kind of like building a home without really putting in a foundation into the home. The home will not stand. Once you've built the whole thing without a solid foundation, the home will come crumbling down like a house of cards. So we must begin here. We must begin here, and we must grasp what the first step has to tell us. What does the first step have to tell us? Number one, the first step begins with a very, very important word, and that word is we. So the very first teaching of the first step is this is a process that happens together. This is a process of unity. This is a process of mutual care, of mutual support, that whatever we're going to do here, we do it. We do it together. And one of the reasons that's so important is because addiction is a disease of isolation. It is a disease that keeps us separate, or in the illusion of separateness. It keeps us alone. And so immediately, the first word of the first step is we, meaning we can no longer be alone. We can no longer be alone. So what we've done together is we admitted we were powerless over addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. Where do people struggle here? It's really right there on the surface. Very few people enjoy expressing their own powerlessness. Very few people like the idea that I might not have enough power unto myself to solve this problem. I'm in a predicament, and my predicament is such that I am powerless over this thing called addiction. Let's break it down. Okay, addiction. I'll use my common definition for addiction: any behavior you continue to do despite the fact that it brings negative consequences into your life. Any behavior you continue despite negative consequences from that behavior coming into your life. Okay. We admitted we were powerless over a behavior that we've been involved in for however long, which now seems to dominate us on some level. Meaning, I might do this behavior even though I'm aware that it usually doesn't go well. I might continue to engage in this behavior even if it hurts or is self-harming in some way. I might continue to engage in this behavior so much that it enters that realm of addiction. I can no longer control my behavior around this substance or this behavior. We're now in the realm of addiction, and I'm entering the world of powerlessness. Here's the way I like to look at the concept of powerlessness, okay? I like to break the word up into power and less, and then I like to reverse it. So powerless becomes less power. So what if you were to admit to yourself, I have less power than what I feel is necessary. I have less power than what I feel is necessary to solve this problem. Somehow it smarts a little bit less. Somehow I'm a little more open to the idea of having less power than what is needed. Whereas that term powerlessness is a little confusing on some levels. It gives me pause. And the last thing you want to do here on first step is hesitate. You don't want to be in confusion. You don't want to be in doubt. You don't want to hesitate. The first step is a seriously clear statement. Let me tell you what, when it comes to alcohol, for me, I'm speaking about me now, you can use the words or the addictions that fit for you. For me, when it comes to alcohol, when it comes to drugs, when it comes to cigarettes, when it comes to gambling and relationships, when it comes to food, when it comes to technology, I seem to have less power than what is needed to solve that problem. Now, here's the thing that this is where people get so hung up. I want you to hear this. Really get this now. That's how I am. That state of powerlessness, of having less power, that's how I am before I recover. That's how I am before I recover. That's not how I am once I have recovered. And this point is so confusing and so misunderstood and so never spoken about. And yet it brings home so much clarity. I'm in a different state at different points of my recovery. I'm not always sick in addiction because, thanks to the 12 steps and other modalities of recovery, I get to recover. If you didn't get to recover, what would be the point here? So you must understand, you get to recover from alcoholism. You get to recover from food addiction. You get to recover from drug addiction and sex addiction and food, all of it. You get to recover from these things. But when you arrive at the beginning of these 12 steps, as you're approaching a particular kind of addiction, you have not yet recovered. You're working on it. And before we recover, we find I have less power than what is needed to solve this problem. So what do? We come humbly to the table and we say, we reach out. First, we say to our innermost self, I don't have this. I cannot do this on my own. It's killing me. I don't want to live the way I've been living. I need another way to live. And you reach out to other people who are on a similar path of recovery. And you say to them, I need help. Can you guide me? And that's what happens within the fellowship of 12-step programs. It could be the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous, or any of the other programs out there. But you reach out to someone and you say, I need help. I don't have enough power to solve this problem. And so that's the first part of the first step. So very important. The second part of the first step is, and we admitted we are powerless over addiction, that our lives have become unmanageable. Why are our lives unmanageable? Because we have had less power than what was necessary to solve this problem. How did we get less power? We became disconnected from the source of power. We became disconnected from our own heart, from our own spirit, from our own soul, from our breath, from our body, from our words, from our family, from our loved ones. We just became disconnected. All of our power lies in those things, and we gave it away. Naturally, we have repeated a self-harming behavior over and over and over again. We've created new neural pathways in the brain. We have changed our physiology because of addiction. Naturally, we have less power than what is needed to solve this problem. And guess what? Because of that, our lives have become unmanageable. What do we mean by unmanageable? It means that we have that feeling generally in life that we're swimming upstream. That's it. That counts for me for unmanageability. I mean, you might say, well, I've got bills piling up. Sure, financial struggles. My relationships, God, I'm just struggling in all my relationships. Absolutely. All the countless ways I feel behind all the time. I'm always stressed. I'm always behind, and I just can't handle my life. That's unmanageability. Now, when we admit it, we admit we have less power than what's needed. We admit it. We have less power than what's needed, and my life has become unmanageable as a result of this. That is all that is needed for the first step to take hold, for the work, for the garden, for the seeds to be planted, for this process that you're about to go through. That first step, that admittance, is all that's needed. What does the world of yoga have to say about this first step? It's really simple. The path of yoga says yoga is a union. Yoga is the place where everything is connected. Yoga is the place where our breath, our body, and our mind is connected. Yoga is the place where our finite, limited self seems to be connected, is connected to an infinite reality, to an infinite source of power, whatever that might mean to you. If you're a quantum physicist, that might mean you're tapping into the unified field, which runs through the entire universe. If you are a religious person, you might say, I'm tapping into God. If you are a spiritual person, you might say, I'm tapping into a higher power, or great spirit, or nature, or whatever your concept is of the thing that is beyond you, beyond this finite self. Yeah? So this is what's happening on the path of yoga, is yoga's coming in and saying, hey, the human condition is such that we feel a separation. We feel this separation. So the yoga philosophy is one where we see all human beings as stuck in this dilemma of addiction. All human beings are stuck in this dilemma of addiction. How are they stuck? They believe they're separate. They believe they're isolated. They believe they're disconnected, that their behavior, that their actions don't affect the whole. There's this feeling of, well, there's me and then there's everything else. So from the yogic perspective, you see, yoga is union. Addiction is disconnection. So you see yoga over here and addiction over here are on the opposite ends of the spectrum. You cannot experience the state of yoga and be in addiction. You cannot be in addiction and experience the state of yoga. They're opposites, like light, darkness, and light. If you have a dark room, pitch black, and you shine a flashlight, the entire room is lit. The darkness is gone. So the path of yoga looks at this first step. It basically says, look, everybody's got this problem of separation. Yoga is the practice that moves you towards connectedness. Yoga is the practice that moves you towards a union. And specifically, yoga is the calming of the fluctuations of the mind. And when we come to the first step, if there's anything we're very aware of, it's the fluctuations of our mind. What we feel it as is unmanageability. The fluctuations of the mind, become an unmanageable thing for us. So that's step one. Now, once we get this step, this first step, this incredibly powerful step, we've surrendered. We've come to the table. I'm open. I'm willing. I want to look at my life. I want to see. What can you show me? How do I find more power? Because if my problem is that I do not have enough power to solve this problem, then I must be looking for a source of power. I must be looking for a source of power. It's that simple. Okay, where can I find the source of power? Let's look at step two. Step two tells us, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. A power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Interesting choice of words here. Interesting choice of words. Let's break it down. Okay. First of all, we have to come to a state of belief. It's just saying, we came to believe. Okay? So through this process of the second step, there's a new belief system taking root in us. We believe on 3 different levels. The first level is, number 1, there has to be something that's greater in power than just me by myself. And actually, you can be an agnostic, atheist, have no belief in God whatsoever. That's not a problem here. You absolutely can access what's the gift of the second step here without any belief in God at all. It just simply says we came to believe that a power greater than ourself. Okay, first of all, there has to be a power greater than ourself. This is how I look at that. I only need one example. I just need one example of a power greater than me by myself, and that solves that problem for me. The problem of me asking myself, do I believe that there's a power greater than me? Okay. Let's say we're trying to solve a problem, and let's say the problem is the problem of addiction. It's you and it's me. So I'm going to pick a name from here. So here's Patrick. So Patrick and I are going to work collectively, the two of us. We're going to work on uplifting each other in our addiction. We're going to uplift each other to move beyond the challenges of addiction. We're going to become sober. We're going to get recovery. We're going to move beyond the frequency of addiction and be free. And we're going to work on that together. Now, here's what I know. Patrick and me working together are more powerful than me working on this problem by myself. That's just a fact. Patrick and me working together are more powerful than me by myself. That's all I need. That's a power greater than myself. So whatever the energy is between me and Patrick, whatever that energy is as we're supporting each other along our path, that energy that takes place between us, call it the energy of connection, call it the energy of love, call it the energy of freedom. We share that energy. That energy is more powerful than me by myself. That's all I need. Okay, so I can come to believe that a power greater than myself, first of all, exists. Next, came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Let's unpack it. Okay. I believe in a power greater than myself. I just proved it to me. I just brought up one case where I know that me and another human being working together is more powerful than me alone. Okay, so there is a power greater than me. All right. But now I have to come to believe that this power is aware of me. That somehow this power is aware of me. How could this be? Well, I think of it like this. I exist in this universe. I'm a part of it. I'm not separate from it. It's not like here's Tommy and then out there is the whole rest of the universe. The universe is threaded through me, just as it's threaded through you. You are a part of everything that is. If you took everything, would you be a part of everything? Of course you would be. Well, so now what we're saying is that there's an intelligence, some kind of knowing that this thing, this universe, is somehow aware of my existence. And what I would ask you is, how could it be any other way? The way I would look at, the way I would explain it to you is this. My little pinky thumb, my pinky nail, okay? I don't think about my pinky nail every day. I'm not consciously thinking, my pinky nail, I wonder how my pinky nail is doing. But if I touch it, it's there. I feel it. If I draw my attention to it, I'm aware of it. kind of like me in the universe. The universe is just aware of everything. It's just there's this constant awareness throughout the entire universe, a consciousness that exists, which is aware of absolutely everything, all the time, through time, beyond time. That this consciousness is what I think we refer to, many people refer to as God. And if you're an atheist or an agnostic, all you would have to say is, physically speaking, there is this thing called the unified field that quantum physicists have actually proven. So again, it's not a religious matter. It's just a spiritual matter. Spiritual in the sense that you can't see it. So we're discussing concepts that are beyond the physical. So when we talk about consciousness, that's a spiritual matter. So in the second step, I have to come to believe, number one, that there's something greater than me. Number two, I have to believe that this something that's greater than me is actually aware of me. Okay? Now here's the second thing. Here's the second thing. Not only is it aware of me, must it be aware of me, but it would somehow want to or would be willing to restore me to sanity. Not only is it aware of me, not only am I in its field, but it wants to restore me to sanity. Why would that be? Why would that be? Because the movement in all things is toward health, is toward well-being. The directive is health, well-being, function, fulfillment, right? That's what's happening here. This thing recognizes, just like I would recognize if I slammed my pinky in a car door, I would want that pinky to heal. I would want it to be better. Why? Because the system wants to run with all of its parts healthy. And what does the word sanity mean? It simply means health, movement toward health. So that's the breakdown of step 2, is I'm going to start anew, enter anew, adopt anew, embrace a new belief system. And in this belief system, there's something greater than me. It's aware of me, and it's interested in my well-being. It's interested in my well-being. What does the path of yoga have to say about the second step? When we start talking about higher power, everything in yoga, the physical practice of yoga, the breath practices of yoga, the ethical practices of yoga, the meditational practices of yoga, all of yoga is geared toward the individual becoming more personally powerful in the context of the universe at large. That we're moving towards a greater and greater, we're unlocking our own power through the process of yoga. Ultimately, we become one with everything that is. That's that wholeness, that union. Ultimately, we're moving in that direction. As we move in that direction, what's taking place? We are coming to believe. We're coming to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, because as we go through our yogic practices, we are restored to physical, mental, and spiritual balance and health. That's what's taking place on that yogic pathway, which dovetails so beautifully with the second step. Okay, third step. What's happening here? Made a decision. Third step. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. Now, we get into that G word, the God word. And this is a concept that will keep people struggling or not succeeding with the 12 steps or staying away from the 12 steps, because that word carries so much stigma, so much weight, so much prejudice, so much misunderstanding. Let's break it down. Okay, third step. First, we've come through step 1. We made a surrender. We admitted we had less power than was necessary to solve this problem. We admitted that our lives had become unmanageable as a result of that. We entered a path towards a belief system where we knew there was power to be had, which was beyond us, that we could tap into something that not only was aware of us, but also had our well-being in mind. And now, knowing this and adopting this belief system and feeling it, we make a decision. Now, what does it mean to make a decision? The word decision can be broken down to its root, which is the word decise. Decise means to cut away, to cut away. So when you make a decision, and this is part of the reason why decisions are so difficult to make, you have to give something up. You have to cut something away. You're going to get something else. You make a decision and you cut something away. What's being cut away? Interesting. What's being cut away here? Made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood God. We're going to have to really unpack this. First, let's start with the last word, God. For the purposes of this discussion, I will preface it this way. Whatever your belief is about God, I'm down with that. Even if you choose to say there is no God, I'm down with that. Or you could say, I don't know. I have no proof. I'm down with that. You see, all that matters in this whole process, this 12-step process, what really matters is you're willing to look at your life with your eyes open, willing to see what presents itself, willing to learn and interpret the events of your life with greater and greater levels of clarity and intuition. The minute somebody tells you, you know, you should really believe this, you should really believe that, like that's a problem. Because somebody's telling you what you should believe. You may or you may not believe what they're telling you. Now, it's certainly no conflict and no problem if you do believe what they're telling you, and maybe you have a direct experience that has brought you to the knowing beyond belief. You're knowing what they're telling you to be true. But what happens when someone tells you to believe something that just doesn't make sense to you, or that hasn't been revealed to you yet? Or maybe it's complete nonsense, and they're saying, believe this. Well, if you are confident, developed, strong self-esteem, a strong sense of self, if you've been trained to think for yourself rather than to be manipulated by others, you have a fighting chance to think for yourself and say, I'll consider what you're saying. That's fine. I'll consider it. But in considering it, I have come to the realization that I actually don't believe what you're saying. And so far, that's how it is for me. That is legitimate. And what would be said is life will reveal to you the things that you need to see and the things that you need to learn, as long as you keep your eyes open. The 12 steps are really about keeping the eyes open and learning from depths of clarity and intuition. Okay, so God. Working with one concept of God. Let's break the God word down into three parts, G and O and D. We'll call the G the generating force. We'll call the O the organizing force. We'll call the D the destroying force or the delivering force. Okay. The generating force. The generating force of the universe is beyond me. I think it's beyond all of us. All you have to do is look out your window at a tree or a plant, and you can see you did not do that. Or you can just watch a sunset. You did not do that. Or watch a rainstorm. You were not responsible for that. or see the unfolding of the events of 7+ billion people on the planet Earth, or the infinite, seemingly infinite number of stars and galaxies in the sky, and you can say to yourself, something generated all this, some force of generation, and it wasn't me. Good enough. Let's move on to the O, the organizing force. You know what I think of? I'll go on a hike in the woods, and I'll pick up a leaf, and I'll look at the leaf and the veins in the leaf, and I'll look at the beauty of it, and maybe there's a flower and the color of the flower, and the way that it's all organized, the design of it, the architecture of it, it's just beyond me. The way the rain falls and maybe drops into a river, and the river flows, and it flows down to an ocean, and there's an evaporating of some of the water off of the ocean, and that becomes rain again over land, and it falls, and so on and so forth. The cycle of water or the cycle of life. There's an organization to these things. I did not organize these things. I go to Yosemite National Park. I look at the architecture of those rocks. I look at the way nature is existing, and everything seems to have a place in nature. If you really sit still long enough, you'll see everything has a purpose. Everything serves everything else. There's nothing that's out of place in nature. And it's kind of like, wow, something organized all this. And it was not me. That's all I need to know. Let's move on to the D. You have the delivering force, destructive force. On that same walk through the woods, I just look down and I see pine needles. I see deciduous trees having dropped their leaves. I see fungus and all kinds of decay and death on the forest floor. Those things were living at one point, but now they're not, and they're being decomposed into another form, another state. This body here, Tommy Rosen, the thing that you call Tommy Rosen, this body that you recognize as me, I look in the mirror and sometimes I don't recognize me. How did this happen? This is not me. Wait a minute. I was 16 half a second ago. Now I'm 51. What happened? How did this come to pass? You see, this body is changing. This body is changing. And this body, this physical form, is going to go away. It will be delivered into another form. The energy that is me, the Sat Nam inside of me, the divine spark in me, just like you have the same thing, that beautiful divine inside of me will go on. That's the consciousness of the universe. It's in me. It's not going to die. Just the body, just this personality, but that consciousness that is in here is going to go on. And by the way, it will go on with whatever consciousness I've accumulated in this life. It will get to continue with that consciousness as well. So there's the D. There seems to be a force in the universe that changes things, that delivers things from one form into another form. But nothing's ever lost. Nothing's ever lost. Well, that destructive force, that delivering force, that isn't me. That's not me. So right here, I make a decision. I make a decision, cutting away, to turn my will and my life over the care of this generating, organizing, and destructive force. Because guess what? There is no choice in the matter. All you're doing is saying, I recognize that I'm a part of the greater thing that's taking place. And when I used to think I was separate from all of it, and you know how I was doing all those drugs and alcohol, and I was behaving in addictive behaviors. You remember that? That was me operating out of alignment with G and O and D. Don't think of it necessarily as a male figure sitting in a chair up in a cloud. Although if that's your idea of God, there's nothing wrong with that. But you can think of it in these broader terms of energy, consciousness, through everything, that generates and organizes and destroys everything all the time. It's happening all the time. Well, I've decided to make a decision to turn my will in my life over to the care of that thing, meaning that I'm not disconnected from it. I'm aware that I'm connected to it. And now my work in the world is to live in such a way that I'm picking up the signs. I'm picking up the signs of the communication, of the subtle communication of consciousness that's going through me and through everything else. That I'm now dedicated to hearing and seeing what's going on with more clarity, more intuition. That when the signs take place in my life, I'm going to pay attention. See, because I've made a decision. What did I cut away? What did I cut away? I cut away my ignorance. I cut away my misunderstanding. I cut away my misperception. I cut away my confusion, and I'm now just stepping into the reality of what actually is anyway, that I was not aware of before, that I was disconnected from before, that I could not even perceive before. And what am I told as I go through this path? More will be revealed. I only need this beginning. I only need this beginning. I must see I don't have enough power because I've thrown my power away and I have not aligned myself with the truth of what is. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, Tommy. Wait a minute now. I don't necessarily believe what you're saying. Or the truth of what is has not revealed itself to me the way it has revealed itself to you. No problem. What you do is you look at the truth as it has revealed itself to you, and you go from there. See, the 12 steps have infinite ways to get in. Infinite. I'm just presenting one perspective. I'm trying to give you a broad perspective, and yet it is only one perspective. Now, if you struggle with this perspective may not be for you. But that doesn't mean that you can't go through these steps and find a perspective that works for you. It's really, really, really important that you give yourself a chance. And here's one more important thing before we get to the yogic perspective on step 3. The thing that you want to realize is you don't know what you don't know. I'm sitting here and I'm telling you that these 12 steps bring you to a spiritual awakening. You don't know whether that's true or not unless you've already had that spiritual awakening. You can only listen to me based on faith. And then you can go through the process and see what takes place for yourself. You don't know what you don't know. So I stand, hopefully, as an example of victory over the disease of addiction. That I've had this spiritual awakening about which I'm speaking. That these ideas that I'm presenting to you now have been very helpful for me. I cannot say that they're going to be helpful for you, but I certainly hope they will. And I hope that you will believe me when I say this is worth exploring and developing your own direct experience. And those two words, direct experience, are the key here. Let me explain. Okay. On the path of yoga. See, on the path of yoga, they tell you this. Believe nothing. Put everything to the test. What test? The test of your awareness. The test of your direct experience. Have you had this experience? Okay, no. But maybe you've had the experience, hopefully, I'm calling myself out, right? I'm putting myself forth, but it's the same as my teachers were for me. The same for me. I'll use Guru Prem as an example, okay? My teacher. So Guru Prem, for me, he was an example of victory. What was he a victory over? Well, he's a victory over pride, anger, lust, most attachments. What else? greed. Like I'm telling you, he stands for me as an example of victory. Now, he does certain things in his life that I don't do. I do a lot of the things that he does do, but I don't do everything that he does. Why not? Because not all of it makes sense to me. Not all of it makes sense to me. I don't blindly do something if it doesn't make sense to me. And he told me not to do that. He said, you have to have your own experience with this. He's a Sikh man. He's religious Sikh. I once said to him, Guru Prem, I don't think I'm a Sikh in this life. And he said, oh, thank God. Thank God. and I was like, he is an example of victory. You need an example of victory. I could be that for you, maybe, or maybe not. Someone else can be that for you. A teacher could be that for you of any kind. A nutritionist could be that for you. A yoga teacher, a meditation teacher could be that for you. You need to know that you can go from where you are to where you want to be. You need to know that you can go from addiction to freedom. You need to know it's true, that it's possible. And I or someone in your life can stand as an example of victory. And so while you don't know yet, you at least have enough faith. You feel that it's possible, that you'll put in the work and you'll observe your life and you'll learn and you'll grow and you'll set yourself free with the aid of the generating, organizing, and delivering force of the universe, whatever that means to you. So you've got to understand, no one can tell you what to believe. You must question everything. So you must do it, but don't blow things off. That's not the yogic way. The yogic way is scientific, okay? Let's explore. Let's explore. Do the 12 steps work? That's not the question you want to ask. The question is, will the 12 steps work for me? And if so, how? Let me go through them. Let me try them, and I will see for myself. Now, in order for me to have the best chance at success, I want to get with a great teacher. I want to get with someone who really understands it. I'm going to put in my energy. I'm going to read and write and do the assignments that I'm being asked to do so that I can bring about the promised transformation of this process. And then, after you go through the process, as a yogi, you will see, this has been my experience. This is what I've learned. And so you see, we must have examples of victory, and then we must have the willingness to take advice so that we can have our own experience and see if this can be helpful for us. I think where many of us get into trouble is we see the word God and we're like, I'm going to use a profane word here. We're like, fuck that. Okay? Not going there. I've seen that word in my life, hasn't served me, too much pain, too much confusion. That path is obviously not for me. That's not very yogic. The yogi is curious. The yogi is always curious. I would like to find out for myself if there's something there for me. So if you're listening to this, then the chances are that you have either been through the 12 steps, or you're in the middle of the 12 steps, or you're at the very least curious about what it could bring to you. I'm hoping that tonight's presentation, which has just been 1 and 2 and 3, has been helpful for you from a couple of perspectives. Number one, I'm hoping that it's inspirational, meaning it's going to compel you to revisit and to work on your own direct experience with these steps. Number one. Number two, I'm hoping that you understand that there are many different ways to look at the 12 steps. There's not one way. And I'm betting that with a little bit of open-mindedness and open-heartedness and willingness, you're going to find a way that works for you. Number 3, I'm hoping you see how yoga and the 12 steps fit together really beautifully. They really, really support each other. That yogic perspective on step 3 is pretty simple. You can be moving toward yoga, or you can be moving towards karma. You can move toward yoga. That move, by the way, is dharma. You can be moving in the right direction. Dharma. You're on purpose. You're on point in your life. So you're either moving towards dharma or you're moving towards karma. Step 3 is simply saying this. Move. I have now made a decision to stop making actions that create more karma in my life. Instead, I'm moving along my dharmic path, which leads to freedom and the resolution of past karma. With that, I will call it an evening. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you all. I hope you guys have a blessed night tonight. Rest up. We've got, what's coming up? We've got an incredible, if you're in the coaching program, Wednesday night, we've got a big session coming up about spiritual awareness and other matters coming up here. So I know you're going to love it. And I hope you guys have a wonderful vacation this week and you're able to rest and be with family. I hope your family don't drive you crazy. If they do drive you crazy, I hope you take care of yourself and do the things you need to do to be free. Sending you so much love. Let's recite the Recovery 2.0 prayer together. Universe, put me in the places you want me to be, with the people you want me to be with, doing the things you want me to do. Thank you for the joys and challenges of my life. Amen. Sat Nam. Stay tuned. We've got more. We have 2 more sessions on the 12 steps coming up in the next few weeks. So look for those. We did 1 through 3 today. We're going to do 4 through 9 next. So look for that. There'll be some announcements. Love you guys so much. Sat Nam.